Imagine England just torn apart, decades of civil war, loyalty shifting constantly, and out of all that chaos, this one figure emerges. Born into, well, incredibly shaky circumstances, he somehow grabs the throne and starts one of England's most famous dynasties.
And we're talking about a king who often gets overshadowed, don't you think? By his, let's say, more flamboyant son.
Exactly. But his reign, it was really a masterclass in pulling a broken kingdom back together. So today, let's journey into the life and times of Henry VII, the very first Tudor monarch. Our mission is to explore how he navigated this, truly treacherous political world to rebuild England. He left this lasting legacy, really shaped the nation's future.
It's a fascinating story. Where do we begin? Right at the start, I suppose.
Let's do that. Henry Tudor, born 1457, Pembroke Castle. His mother, Lady Margaret Beaufort, was just 13.
13. It's hard to even imagine. And his father, Edmund Tudor, actually died 3 months before Henry was born. Talk about a difficult start.
Tumultuous doesn't quite cover it. And what's striking about his early life is how it reflected the divisions of the time. He was raised partly by his Lancastrian uncle, Jasper Tudor.
And partly by a Yorkist supporter, William Herbert. It's such a unique situation.
How did that shape him, being brought up effectively by both sides of the conflict?
Well, I think it gave him this incredibly pragmatic understanding of the deep divisions in the kingdom. When Jasper Tudor had to flee into exile, Henry was under Yorkist guardianship for a time. It wasn't just something that happened to him. It seems to have forged this political astuteness.
He saw both sides firsthand.
Exactly. He understood the necessity of unity, a lesson he applied, sometimes ruthlessly, but definitely effectively, throughout his reign. It was an education in politics you couldn't get any other way, really.
And that understanding probably got even sharper during his next big chapter, 14 years in exile. Edward IV, the Yorkist king, retakes the throne in 1471, and Henry has to flee to Brittany. Over a decade under the protection of Duke Francis II.
14 years is a long time to be away, living under someone else's protection, always looking over your shoulder.
Was it quiet? Or was he constantly in danger? Any moments that really stand out from that time?
Oh, it was anything but quiet. There was this incredibly dramatic moment, November 1476. He was in St. Malo, and English envoys were basically there to collect him. He was about to be handed over.
No. How did he escape?
He feigned severe stomach cramps. Apparently, quite convincingly, it delayed things just long enough that they missed the tides.
It's pure luck, almost.
Maybe a bit of luck and quick thinking. Then, while they were waiting, an ally arrived with news that Duke Francis, who'd been ill, had recovered and was back in charge. In all the confusion, Henry managed to slip away and claim sanctuary in a nearby monastery.
Wow. That's a close call. It really highlights the constant peril, doesn't it? And his resourcefulness.
Absolutely. It shows he had that survivor's instinct long before he was king.
So, after this precarious youth, this long exile, how does he go from just surviving to actually making a bid for the throne? What were the key steps?
Well, things started to shift around 1483. His mother, the formidable Lady Margaret Beaufort, was really actively promoting him back in England as an alternative to Richard III, who was increasingly unpopular.
She was his advocate on the inside.
Precisely. And then came a really pivotal moment. Christmas Day 1483 in Rennes Cathedral, Henry publicly pledged to marry Elizabeth of York.
Edward V's daughter. The Yorkist heir, essentially.
Exactly. This was a masterstroke. It wasn't just about his own Lancastrian claim anymore. By promising to marry Elizabeth, he positioned himself as the person who could finally unite the two warring houses.
So he offered a way to end the conflict.
He offered reconciliation. It gave his cause a much broader appeal, attracting Yorkists who were unhappy with Richard III. It was crucial for building the support he needed.
Very strategic. And he kept that up when he finally landed with his army, didn't he? At Mill Bay in Pembrokeshire, playing up his Welsh ancestry.
Oh, definitely. He leaned into it heavily, claiming descent from Cadwallader, the last ancient British king, flying the Red Dragon standard. It was all about tapping into that Welsh identity and history to gain support and safe passage.
So symbolism was a big part of his toolkit right from the start.
A powerful tool. It wasn't just tactics, it was about building this narrative of legitimacy, of destiny even, rallying people to something bigger than just another power struggle.
Which brings us to Bosworth Field, 1485. Henry's forces are outnumbered, but they win decisively against Richard III. And crucially, some of Richard's key allies.
Like the Stanley brothers.
Right.
Well, they either switched sides right there on the field or just held back, effectively abandoning Richard. It was a huge turning point.
And this victory makes him the last English king to actually win his throne on the battlefield. That feels incredibly significant. What does that tell us about how he approached ruling?
It's profound, really. His claim wasn't just inherited, it was won, conquered, and I think that fact winning it through force of arms probably gave him this unique drive to consolidate power, to protect it at all costs.
No room for doubt.
Exactly. He used every tool, law, marriage, finance, to make sure nobody could challenge him in the same way ever again. It set a tone of absolute authority from day one.
And speaking of day one, his first act, declaring himself king from the day before Bosworth, August 21st. That seems incredibly calculated. Why do that?
Pure political genius, in a ruthless sort of way. By backdating his reign, anyone who fought against him at Bosworth instantly became a traitor.
So he could legally punish them.
And confiscate their lands and property. It simultaneously legitimized his victory, punished his enemies, rewarded his allies, and filled his coffers all in one legal move. A very clear statement about who was now in charge.
Okay, so he's won the throne. But securing it, establishing a whole new dynasty after decades of war, that's another challenge entirely. His marriage to Elizabeth of York in 1486 must have been central.
Absolutely critical, Westminster Abbey. It visually merged the red rose of Lancaster and the white rose of York. The Tudor rose became the symbol of this new unity.
Ending the conflict, symbolically at least.
And practically, too. He even had Parliament repeal Titulus Regis, that's the title of the King's statute, which had declared Edward V's marriage invalid and his children, including Elizabeth, illegitimate.
So he legitimized his own wife, which I suppose raises questions about her brothers, the princes in the Tower, but definitely strengthened his position through her claim.
Precisely. It bolstered his own legitimacy by confirming hers.
But even with the marriage, the paranoia didn't just disappear. He faced rebellions aimed at testing this new dynasty in 1487, claiming to be Edward of Warwick.
Yes, the young Earl of Warwick, who was actually imprisoned by Henry, Simnel gained quite a bit of support, especially over in Ireland.
Right, and Henry's response after defeating that rebellion is, well, it's quite something.
It really is intriguing. He showed remarkable clemency, actually. Pardon the Irish nobles involved. And Simnel himself. Henry gave him a job in the royal kitchens, roasting meats. Seriously. It was brilliant in a way. Showed mercy, but also completely dismissed Simnel's claim by making him a domestic servant. Publicly reduced him to harmlessness.
A very practical king, even in dealing with pretenders. But Simnel wasn't the last. Perkin Warbeck came along in the 1490s.
A much more persistent threat. Warbeck claimed to be Richard of Shrewsbury, the younger of the princes in the Tower.
Ones who disappeared.
Exactly. And Warbeck got support from some powerful people. Margaret of Burgundy, Richard III's sister, for one. He even persuaded James IV of Scotland to invade England on his behalf at one point.
That sounds much more serious than Simnel. How did Henry handle that?
With much greater severity. The threat was bigger, and Henry's response was tougher. He tightened security significantly. He even executed his own chamberlain, Sir William Stanley, who had been crucial at Bosworth, remember. Apparently, they found incriminating evidence. Things like a bag of coins, a Yorkist livery collar. Enough for Henry to act decisively. He wasn't taking any chances. And eventually, Warbeck was captured and executed.
And he also executed the real Earl of Warwick in 1499.
He did. Edward Plantagenet, Earl of Warwick, the last real male Plantagenet claimant. It was brutal, yes, but from Henry's perspective, it eliminated the final, lingering dynastic threat. It sent a very stark message.
Consolidating power by any means necessary. But beyond just security, Henry seems like a real architect of stability, especially financially. He inherited a bankrupt treasury. How did he turn that around?
He was incredibly focused on finances. Unlike previous kings who spent lavishly, Henry focused on raising revenue and, crucially, keeping it. He paid meticulous attention to detail.
And he wasn't afraid to be tough on collecting taxes.
Not at all. He was known for being ruthless, famously aided by Archbishop John Morton and his Morton's Fork.
Ah, yes, Morton's Fork. Explain that again.
It was this wonderfully cynical no-win logic applied to nobles. If a noble lived modestly, Morton argued, they must have saved a lot and could therefore afford high taxes. But if a noble lived extravagantly, well, that clearly proved they had ample wealth and could afford the taxes.
Effective, I imagine, but probably not very popular.
Extremely effective for the treasury, but yes, deeply unpopular. His main tax collectors, Richard Empson and Edmund Dudley, became notorious for their methods, sometimes seen as capricious and unjust.
Did that damage his reputation?
It certainly tarnished his legacy among the nobility and probably others too. After Henry VI died, a commission found widespread abuses, and his son, Henry VIII, actually had Empson and Dudley executed on trumped-up treason charges. It was a politically expedient move to distance himself from his father's unpopular policies.
Shows you how resented those methods were. But Henry wasn't just about taxes, he was also shrewd with trade.
Very shrewd, he understood the importance of commerce. He made money through dealings in things like alum vital for the cloth dyeing industry. But his biggest economic achievement, diplomatically, was probably the Magna Sintercursus.
The Great Agreement, what did that do?
Signed in 1496, it restored trade relations with the Burgundian Netherlands, which was crucial for English wool exports. After an earlier embargo, it removed taxes for English merchants trading there, boosting England's wealth significantly. Antwerp became a key hub.
So opening up markets.
Exactly. He even tried to push for an even better deal later, the Malus Intercursus, or Evil Agreement, in 1506 when he had Philip of Burgundy temporarily in his power. But it was so ridiculously favorable to England that other European powers basically refused to accept it. Shows his determination, though.
Relentless pursuit of advantage. It seems his whole foreign policy was geared towards peace and prosperity, avoiding expensive wars.
That was the overarching goal. Keep the peace, build the economy. Treaties like the one with France, Etaples, brought in French payments and ensured they wouldn't back any more pretenders.
Smart. And he invested in infrastructure too. The dry dock.
Yes, Europe's first dry dock at Portsmouth, 1495. A major investment in the Navy, which supported both trade and defense. He understood that link.
A long-term vision.
Absolutely. He even funded John Cabot's voyage west, leading to the discovery of Newfoundland. He was thinking about England's place in a wider world.
And he used marriage alliances strategically too.
Crucially, the Treaty of Medina del Campo with Spain arranged for his eldest son, Arthur, to marry Catherine of Aragon, linking England to a major European power.
A marriage with huge consequences down the line, obviously.
Indeed. And the Treaty of Perpetual Peace with Scotland, marrying his daughter Margaret to King James V. That was incredibly farsighted.
Because that eventually led to the Scottish king inheriting the English throne.
Exactly. James VI of Scotland became James VI of England, Margaret's great-grandson, a direct result of Henry VI's diplomacy. He was even encouraging the Pope to try and organize peace among Christian nations against the Ottomans. He taught big.
So he's stabilizing the economy, making smart alliances abroad. But back home, he still had the problem of these powerful nobles with their own private armies left over from the Wars of the Roses. Bastard feudalism, right?
Yes, that system where nobles maintained large retinues of armed followers identified by their lord's badge or livery. It gave them immense local power, sometimes enough to challenge the crown.
How did Henry tackle that? He couldn't just abolish the nobility.
No, he was clever. He allowed loyal nobles their influence, but he cracked down hard on those who seemed like a threat. He used existing laws, but enforced them much more strictly, laws against livery and maintenance, basically restricting the size of these private retinues. He levied heavy fines.
Hitting him in the pocketbook.
Precisely. And his main tool for dealing with powerful subjects who might try to defy the law was the Court of Star Chamber.
Ah, the Star Chamber. It has a bit of a sinister reputation now, but what was its purpose under Henry VII?
It wasn't actually new, he revived it. It was essentially a court made up of his trusted privy councillors meeting in the Star Chamber at Westminster. Its purpose was to bypass the slower, potentially corruptible common law courts and deal swiftly with powerful individuals, nobles, mostly involved in disputes, riots, or perceived threats to royal authority.
So a way to ensure the nobility couldn't just ignore the law or intimidate local courts.
That was the idea. It was seen by some as necessary to restore order after the chaos, but it definitely concentrated judicial power in the hands of the king and his council.
And he also expanded the role of local figures, justices of the peace.
Greatly expanded their use, yes. These were unpaid local gentry, appointed annually the JPs. They became the key enforcers of law and order across the country.
Unpaid. Why would they do it?
Prestige, local influence. It was an important position. They oversaw acts of parliament locally, checked weights and measures, tried to prevent jury tampering, all sorts. It was an incredibly efficient system for Henry.
Because it extended royal authority right down to the local level without costing the crown much.
Exactly. It helped curb the endemic corruption and local power imbalances that had plagued England during the Wars of the Roses. It really cemented royal control nationwide.
So as we sort of round out our picture of Henry VII, we should probably touch on the man himself, especially in his later years. They were marked by some Really profound personal losses, weren't they?
They were. In 1502, his eldest son and heir, Arthur, Prince of Wales, died very suddenly. Probably the English sweating sickness, a terrible blow.
Making his second son, the future Henry VIII, the heir.
Yes. And contemporaries noted something interesting. Henry VII was usually very reserved, not one for public displays of emotion unless it was anger. But apparently he was overcome with grief at Arthur's death, sobbing openly, which really surprised his courtiers.
It shows a different side to the austere king.
It does. And then just the following year, 1503, his wife, Queen Elizabeth of York, died.
Another huge loss.
By all accounts, he was devastated. He apparently shut himself away for days, refused to speak to anyone. These reactions really point towards it being a genuinely happy, devoted marriage, which wasn't always the case with royal matches.
No, definitely not. How did these losses affect him, his reign?
They must have left a deep mark. He did make some, well, half-hearted plans to remarry, partly for alliances, partly maybe to secure more heirs. He considered Joanna of Naples, even sent ambassadors to check her out physically, which sounds rather clinical now.
Assessing her physical suitability.
Right, but nothing ever came of it. And it's interesting, Henry VII is one of the few British monarchs known never to have had any mistresses. And for his time, not remarrying after being widowed was also quite unusual.
Why do you think he didn't?
Perhaps grief, perhaps political calculation, maybe a combination. But it did leave the Tudor dynasty in a slightly precarious position, didn't it? With only one male heir, the young Henry. He must have worried about that constantly.
Especially given how hard he'd worked to establish the dynasty in the first place. It's fascinating, too, that his personal account books survive.
They do, meticulously kept down to the last halfpenny. And they reveal that before Elizabeth's death, he was actually quite a doting father and husband, spending generously on gifts and comforts for his family.
So the public image of the careful, perhaps even miserly king doesn't tell the whole story.
Not the whole private story, no. It's a powerful contrast, the private man dealing with heartbreak, and the public monarch meticulously managing his kingdom's finances.
Henry VII eventually died in 1509 of tuberculosis at Richmond Palace. He was 52, buried next to Elizabeth in Westminster Abbey.
And importantly, he was peacefully succeeded by his son, Henry VIII. That smooth succession was perhaps his ultimate achievement, proving the dynasty was secure.
Definitely. His reputation has fluctuated, criticized by nobles then for centralizing power, by historians later for his tough tax methods. Yet you can't deny his reign laid these absolutely crucial foundations for England's future stability and growth.
He was a survivor, a shrewd strategist, and it seems a surprisingly private family man under immense pressure. He navigated an incredibly difficult path.
So, to leave our listeners with something to think about, consider how those deep personal tragedies Henry endured, losing his heir, losing his wife, might have shaped not just his own character, but the very foundations of the monarchy he was building. Did that private grief create unexpected strengths or maybe vulnerabilities that defined the Tudor era he ushered in? What does that tell us about how personal life and public power interact?